Good morning, everyone. So I am getting set up to do the first demonstration of the knot assignment. What we're gonna do is you're gonna see a whole post on Blackboard with a PDF that walks you through step by step as a handout, but I'm gonna also upload these demos. So I'm going to turn you a little bit. You're on a sort of tripod, so bear with me, it's gonna get shaky. That is my setup. It's hard to see, and that's tattoo slinking behind it. What it is I tied a t-shirt into a knot. You'll see how to do all of that and get it set up appropriately on the handout as well. And I have it set up on one of my kitchen chairs. What it is I'm working at my kitchen table, so I want to make sure that my setup is close to where I want to set up to draw. Something really important about working from home is it's easy to not have all of your materials near you, and then you get up and you go and you leave and you walk and all of those things. So it's hard to not get distracted. So I've made a workspace for myself with what I have. I'm gonna show you that now. So this is my workspace. I've got my paper, I've got my pencils, everything is where it needs to be. I'm gonna try to have you looking over my shoulder while I work, so I apologize, you won't be able to see my mouth, but there is closed captioning. So hopefully you will be able to follow along with text. Okay. Trying to set it up so that you're looking over my shoulder. I'm gonna move the still life so that I can see it. I'm gonna move this so I can sit. And now you're on my shoulder. Sorry, thank you for bearing with me. Making sure to get you all set up. So I assume, whoop, nope. There we go. Okay, thank you for your patience. Oh, I'm sorry. So I assume most of us are going to be working out of our sketchbooks. So what I have is a slightly larger sketchbook. I'm going to keep my drawing in the pad. You can see that I've gone ahead and taped off a section. This is where I'm going to be drawing. It's just to kind of keep things neat. I'm going to have a piece of scrap paper nearby. This is something that I can set my hand on. Sorry, my table is very wobbly, so, you know, it's vintage. I don't know. You work with what you got. I'll do my best to not wobble it. So I have all of my pencils near me. I have a mechanical pencil. It's got a good eraser on it. That's part of why I have it out. I have an HB pencil, which means it's got a very light mark, right? HB is lower and lighter. The higher up 2B is a little bit darker. 4B is darker than that. 6B, 8B, so on. So I also have a 4B. This is just stuff that I've got kind of in my art cabinet. I also have a black color pencil. So that's what I'm starting with. But I made it important that I have all of this out next to me so that I don't get up or get distracted looking for things, right? So once our surface is nice and taped, I'm gonna go ahead and start with my HB pencil because it's my lightest, right? I think number 2 pencils, it's probably a 2B lead, so it's a little bit darker than this. That's just your standard like yellow pencil, mechanical pencil shindig. So first off, we get to decide if we want to do our drawing landscape or portrait, right? I want to do my landscape. Now I'm going to grid it using the rule of 3s. All right, so I'm just going to very lightly make some marks. And this is so I know where my sweet spots are, right? That's where I want my knot to be, because this is the focal point. Okay, the knot is my actor. Okay. And then I'm going to start by simply mapping in some of the big shapes that I see. If I need to measure, I'm going to hold my pencil up and use that to measure. Okay. So I want my knot to hit one of the sweet spots. I'm going to focus on this bottom right one right here. And I might start drawing a little darker than I normally would. That way you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to start by drawing my knot as a rectangle. You might see yours as a circle, you might see it as an oval. I'm just starting with a basic shape. And then I'm going to show the fabric that comes away from it, right? At an angle as well. And like I said, I'm drawing a little bit darker than I would recommend you would. I'd stay very faint, okay? I'm only drawing dark so that you can see where I'm starting. And then I'm gonna let this come right off the page, right? You see how I'm going right over that tape? I'm not worried about it. I'm gonna pull it up. It's okay. And now measuring, right? I'm realizing I might have drawn my knot a little too small. So I'm gonna make it bigger. Now, normally when we draw with charcoal, we work on finding shapes by kind of chiseling in or using the tool to our advantage. We do a lot of dragging and a lot of moving, right? We don't work with line, but I'm using a pencil, and all that can make a mark is this tip. So we're gonna change how we approach. We're gonna rely a lot on line, okay? It doesn't mean we need to outline. We can still keep our lines dynamic, right? When I'm talking about a dynamic line, instead of something that's just straight, something that's got, you know, weight. It's darker in areas, it's lighter in areas, it has movement to it, okay? Also, in relying on line, I'm gonna rely a lot more on my eraser. When we work with charcoal, we can just wipe areas out and start over. With pencil, you need your tools, okay? So, now that I have really basic shapes down, okay, I'm also gonna go ahead and throw in my horizon line because I can see a space in the chair behind the knot, okay? So I'm gonna put that in as well, okay? Now you don't need to like go into a lot of detail in the chair, but you do need to have your background there. Now that my basic shapes are down, I would say I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shapes, bare minimum, okay? I'm gonna start working in a very sketchy manner, okay? And when I say sketchy, you're gonna see me make a lot of small lines instead of pulling through in one large gesture. And I'm going to find what I'm gonna call like my medium larger shapes, right? I'm gonna start bringing this out of its simplicity. So, my knot has 2 kind of big sections where the fabric is falling in on itself. And I can see that it's smaller here at the bottom. And that it kind of wraps around and dips. Okay, as I do that, I can start erasing some of my rectangle that's no longer needed. All right, because that's just gonna get distracting. The more lines that we have, I'm not gonna remember which ones I'm supposed to follow. All right, so this is the part of the knot that goes around, and then this is the part of the knot that goes in. So I'm gonna make some quick directional lines, okay, that show that there's fabric going into this dip. Okay, I'm looking a lot. I know you're looking at this, so you can't see me, but I'm looking constantly at my actual still life. I'm gonna find another triangle shape. the fabric that goes in. Okay, it kind of bunches up here. And you can see I'm pretty close. I got a little bit bigger there, and I want to know if that's accurate. I don't think it is. So I'm going to find a little bit of a middle ground here. All right? And then, so that is there. Okay, so that's the part of the knot that comes over. Right here, this is over, and this is going in. Now I'm going to break this space down into larger shapes. I'm going to find some directional lines, similar to, that's what I'm referring to this as, right? Directional lines, so I know where my folds are in my fabric. Over here, they come out from this area, right? And they curve upwards, so I'm gonna make some of those marks so that I know that my fabric is going in here, all right? And then what I'm seeing is this shape, this angle is a lot sharper than I thought it was. So I'm gonna erase it a little bit, and I'm gonna follow that curve over. Okay? When I'm measuring it, what I'm seeing is that this fabric hits here. It matches up with the side of the knot in my still life, okay? So that's what I'm using. I'm using this as my guide mark. Yours is gonna be different. Everyone's is gonna be different, okay? All right, but then I can see that this is a fold there. There's another big fold. I'm drawing up over my tape because I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm gonna let it follow those same lines, okay? I've got another weird fold here. What I'm doing is I'm just finding my basic shapes, right? We started with a rectangle and two kind of angular shapes. Now I'm just finding some of the larger shapes within shapes, okay? Sometimes that's just a dynamic line to give me an idea of where folds are. Sometimes it's an actual shape, okay? I see that this kind of continues. And that comes into there. I'm gonna extend the side of my knot a little bit out. All right. And I'm kind of seeing this divide into three shapes, okay? I'm gonna do the same thing down on this side, all right? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start breaking it down into shapes, okay? I'm also looking at my negative space, right? When we're talking about active space and negative space, okay? So if I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around drawing the active space, I'm gonna try and switch my perspective a little bit. I'm gonna look at it from a different angle, okay? We're still problem solving. So, my knot starts down here. There's a peak, right? We've talked a lot about peaks and valleys in fabric. It's really just a triangle shape. It's got two indents in it. They're pretty clear. Okay, as I'm going, I'm going to erase some of my old lines because I don't want to confuse myself, all right? I don't want to have my old map in here when I'm starting to correct my shape, okay? Still staying very, very loose. All right, there's another fold that comes out of this middle, and it kind of meets this area, which gets really complex in my still life. So I'm trying to simplify it as much as I can now so that I know what's happening later. It's a lot of triangular shapes. Okay. Over here is another triangular shape. I'm gonna let it go off the page, but I still see shapes down here that come up to the base of this knot, okay, which is a little bit wider than I thought it was. See, so I'm making a lot of changes as I learn as I go, right? The more I have to measure by, the more I'm able to accurately draw these shapes in space in comparison to each other, okay? But these are areas that are going to be very, very dark because they're much further behind. What I'm also going to do, right, is I'm just going to make some directional lines on the knot now, because I can see it kind of broken into thirds, where this is where the fabric is wrapping around, and it's wrapping around. All right, there's some little dents here. It curves in a little bit here. I'm gonna make that shape a little bit bigger. You can hear my cats running around. I'm gonna go back now that I've mapped, right? I would say this is successfully mapped, okay? The knot part. I've got my basic shapes of my knot. I've got some directional marks for my fabric. I've got a lot of folds marked in on these spaces. There are some big open spots, but now I'm gonna focus a little bit on my background, all right? So I can see my chair here, and it curves out, and I can see it again here. Notice how when I'm drawing through an object, but I don't want to make a line through it, what I'm doing is I'm drawing, lifting a little bit, continuing the gesture, drawing again, okay? That way I'm not drawing through and changing where my line comes out on the other end, all right? But I'm also not making a mark straight through my drawing, which you might not be as comfortable with when you're using graphite, which is pencils. So once I've got those backgrounds in, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna map my shadows as well, okay? Because that's what also needs to lay in. We work our drawing up as a whole, all right? Not in sections. I'm not gonna finish the knot and not have this background established, okay? So I have a shadow that comes up here, and it kind of follows the knot. It gets very close here, and then it gets big again, all right? I'm gonna very lightly, very, very lightly shade that area in, all right? I'm not doing a lot of detail. You can see my shading doesn't go all the way to the edges, but it's just so I have a mental note that this is a shadow when I come back to it, because otherwise I might be, you know, confused if I don't look at this drawing for a day, okay? Now I can see that this fabric comes off the edge of my paper, right? So I'm drawing it off the edge of my paper, but I can see my chair comes up. That's where the back of my chair connects to the base, right? But it's all in shadow, so I'm gonna go ahead and just mental note for myself, right? Background, 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 all right? In these spaces, we talk a lot about comparative darkness. For me, these shadows are darker than this space, so I'm not gonna shade that in yet, okay? And this space, right, is darker than these two. So I'm gonna make it a little pinchy darker, not a lot. It's not a seriously significant space just yet, but just so I know that it's not that important. Then what I'm gonna look at is my shadows on this side, okay? I don't see any of my chair over here, but I should, in theory. So what that means is I'm missing part of my fabric. And if I look back, yep, I have a piece of fabric that comes out a lot further than I thought it did. And I just didn't see it, okay? Because I need to look carefully and I need to look at it as a whole picture. And what I'm gonna do is I can see a space, like I said, this is negative space, right? This is looking through my chair. I can see a little bit of a highlight A bit of a change of light. So I'm just going to make a mark there to show that these spaces are going to be different. Now I'm going to do a little bit of the detail in the chair. You do not have to, okay? This is just for myself. It's got a little bit of edging there. And then I'm going to start finding my shadows. There's a really dark shadow in here. So I'm going to mark that one in. And then it kind of follows this line. All right? That's where it's really dark. That actually might be my darkest dark, right? I'm making a mental note now. Darkest dark's probably right there and inside the knot itself, okay? I'm gonna let this shape get a little bit bigger. It's interesting how knots look like anatomical hearts to me. Everyone's gonna see something different, but that's always what I see. All right, and then this shape kind of follows that shadow, all right? Because the knot is in front and it's casting the shadow backwards. So, it's not a problem. Get it? It's not a problem. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. So, and then kind of like this is a big expansive space in my composition. It can kind of be a place of rest. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna gradient that out that way, okay? I'm making a little arrow there. That's how I mentally note for myself, like, okay, that's what we're gonna do. It's gonna shape outwards. I'll take my shadow out, that way it stays active. I might also do a little bit of shading up here so that my lightest part in my gradient is right here. That way it doesn't run you all the way off the corner, but still keeps this space as visually exciting as my actor. All right, so you can see that I've made a lot of changes. I'm gonna wipe away a lot of my eraser. I went from a rectangular shape, right, with two triangles and like a horizon line, okay? And now I've got a lot of dynamic mark making. Yes, there's still areas of rest. Yes, there's still big parts, but this is part of mapping. I'm using a lot of directional lines, right, to show myself where my fabric is moving, okay? It's coming out here, it's coming out here, it's coming out, and it's wrapping around this way, all right? I've started mapping in my shadows. This is really where I want you to get on that first day, okay? I want you to map a lot. Once again, it was very easy to do this when I made sure that I had a nice setup for myself. That's the most important thing about working from home is it's very hard to get into this headspace where you're ready to draw, okay? If you're having a hard time with that, look at all this extra space I have, right? What I can do is I can thumbnail, okay? You can do this in your sketchbook, you can do this on computer paper, notebook paper, anything you want, okay? If I'm having a hard time mapping and getting to this point, I'm just gonna make 3 little rules of 3, right? And I would start by kind of laying out what it is I want to look at and see how it looks if I move my knot in different places on my drawing, all right? I probably should have done that first in the demo. It was a lot easier for me to dive in. That's my method of working. If this is easier for you, start with this. If you start by diving in and you find it's getting frustrating, stop yourself and go ahead and make little thumbnails, okay? There's no rush. We all work at our own paces, right? This way I can see, like, I'm not a fan of this composition. I'm not gonna do it. These two are interesting. I went with my gut. I started with this, okay? I think that's about it for this demo. I think that's where we're gonna start. I'm gonna draw along with you on this one. And, okay. Tune in next time.